screen sharing, so I can't.
No, it's okay. Okay. Hello,
Okay,
everyone who's currently in the meeting. We're going to start just in like 2 to 3 minutes, just allowing more people to join, and then we'll get started right away. Okay, I think we'll get started now. So welcome everyone to the Wise Youth webinar. So, oh, someone says they can't hear me. Can you guys hear me okay? Wait, Meg, can you hear me? Or
I can
Can
hear
hear
you.
you.
Yes.
Yeah.
okay. I'm just gonna continue. Okay. Someone says they can hear me. It's fine then. Okay, so
Okay,
welcome
perfect.
everyone to Wise Youth webinar. So for today's topic, I'm joined with two guest speakers, Margaret and Ailee, who are incoming freshmen to the University of British Columbia and UBC Sauder specifically. So for those who may not know, so UBC is like I said, the University of British Columbia, and the Sauder School of Business is a really prestigious one and really well known in Canada. So those fellow Canadians who are currently attending and you're curious about Canadian business schools or you're interested in that area, yeah, this webinar will provide you with a lot of information regarding that. So just before we begin, I want to touch on a few details about the Q&A. So you can see on your Zoom webinar below, there's a Q&A box as well as a chat box. So throughout the webinar, you can use those two applications to ask any questions you have regarding anything that is discussed. And then either Ailee or Margaret can decide to answer your question then and there, or they can also save your question for the end where we will have a separate Q&A section. So that section is designated to any questions you have regarding UBC Sauder, university applications, high school life, or anything in general that you have for Margaret and Ailee, which they can answer. So yeah, that's going to be the Q&A section. But then for the first portion, they're going to quickly go over a presentation about UBC Sauder specifically. So that's going to be it on my end, and I hope all of you guys enjoy today's webinar. I'm going to pass it now to Margaret and Ailee, who will do their own personal introductions.
All right. Thank you, Queenie, for that great introduction. Hi, I'm Margaret, as Queenie said, and my friend Ailee and I, who are both incoming freshmen to UBC Sauder School of Business, will now be starting our mini webinar.
So to start off, we'll let you guys know a little bit about us and our application process. We'll let you know how we did it and what the application process is like in general. And then we'll let you guys see a few of our exemplars and our personal statements. And finally, we'll end with some tips that we think will be helpful for any incoming prospective students.
All right, just so you guys get to know about me and Ailee more, I guess, on a personal level and have a better idea of who we are as just like students and people outside of school as well. Obviously, my name is Margaret. I am now a Sentinel secondary graduate. I really like to read, bake, and overall physical exercise, such as just going to the gym, doing free weights or taekwondo, and hiking. My favorite hiking trail at the moment is the one in Deep Cove. It's super nice. If you haven't been yet, I really recommend it. The view is just amazing. And how I decided to go to UBC Sauder, honestly, UBC has just always been my dream school. I have a sister that's 8 years older than me, and she went to UBC. She's now a doctor, actually, as of recent. She's a pediatrician. So honestly, I just look up to my sister and seeing her experiences at UBC and just hearing how great the community was and also the professors were. I just decided to go to UBC, and in grade 10 is when I decided to go onto the business route instead of the sciences route, which I was debating about.
Okay, and a little bit about me. I'm Ailee. I'm also a graduate from Sentinel Secondary and a prospective student at Sauder next year. I was debating between a few choices, but ultimately chose Sauder because it was close to home and I was familiar with the environment there. A few of my hobbies are badminton, baking, and oil pastel painting. They're just sort of like my therapy hobbies, and I tend to enjoy them a lot, especially during a stressful exam season. And yeah, I ultimately decided to go to UBC because I chose the business route. And I also got into a few other unis, but UBC just sort of felt at home, and that's why I decided to go there.
Now we'll just dive right into the application process and go into the more specific qualities of it. Now, at UBC, if you guys aren't familiar, how they assess your application is based on three things, as you see. It's weighted on your personal profile, which is 30%. And for Sauder specifically, we have an additional video interview, which is 20%. And your grades do, you know, play an aspect in this as well. So that's going to be 50%. So based on these percentages, you can see the personal profile does matter quite a lot, but we'll get more into that later on. So you guys don't stress about it right now. And I will say for the grades, how UBC typically assesses your grades is they look at your top six courses, and that's just going to be your average and how they assess you for your whole application. And this is particularly for academic courses. So what I mean by that, they won't be looking at ADS-B courses or elective courses. For example, maybe Foods 11 or Foods 12. They won't necessarily be looking at that or just not look at that at all. They'll be mainly looking at second language courses, mathematics, sciences, and English. So for example, if you took Chemistry 11, they'll be looking at that when they assess you.
Okay, and now a little bit about UBC personal profiles. So a personal profile is a series of questions that you answer to show the administration or the admissions officer a little bit about you and your achievements throughout the years in high school. They could be targeted like specifically towards like a specific faculty, or it could be a general question. UBC's Sauder's specific personal profile consists of, I would split it up into three parts. Two general questions that relate to all of your programs. So if you apply for a secondary program, it will also be used for that. There are two Sauder specific questions that are only used when you're applying to the Bachelor of Commerce or any other Sauder program. And there's also the video interview where you answer recorded questions online. Personally, I would say that the UBC personal profile is the most important part of your application aside from grades. And because I would say this because it allows UBC and the university to see a little bit more about you and gives you a sort of uniqueness amongst all the thousands of other applicants. And next, a little bit about the video interview.
Now I'll be going more into the video interview. So this video interview is actually very non-traditional. It's not face-to-face like over Zoom or another platform. They actually do it all recorded. So not only are you recording yourself and your response, but they also play a recorded video of the question that you'll be getting. So for Sauder video interviews, typically you'll only be receiving two questions. Once the question is played, which they'll repeat two times, you have 30 seconds to brainstorm your response. And after those 30 seconds are up, you have 90 seconds to respond, and that recording starts automatically. However, you don't need to use up all of the 90 seconds, but I would recommend that you do, because if you use up all those 90 seconds, not only can you kind of pace yourself throughout your whole response, you can also create a nuanced response. So that gives more of a deeper analysis into your thinking and also your critical thinking skills. The type of questions you'll be asked as well are two different types, situational and opinionated. As you can see, these are basically what I mean by situational and opinionated. Situational, they'll be asking you a question about a scenario or asking you to recall a moment where you did a certain thing or you experienced a certain thing. So, for example, if you had a team member who was contributing less than other team members, what would you do to motivate him or her? Opinionated, they just kind of really know who you are as a person and what you value. So, this is like, what are three principles that you hold dear and why? And usually, when you want to answer these opinionated questions, it's really nice to touch on the values that Sauder always emphasizes, such as responsibility. So, if I was answering this question, I'd probably touch on responsibility and why I value responsibility and how I apply that in my own life in school and outside of school. Now, going more into my application, I kind of split this two ways, my classes and extracurriculars. And although I took elective courses, I just didn't include them since UBC, as I said before, doesn't assess you on elective courses. So in grade 11, I took chemistry 11, pre-AP English, French 11, and pre-calculus 12. From what I remember, you can check on the UBC website which courses are required for the Sauder program. I do remember, just from memory, you need an English, a second language, a science, and pre-calculus 11. I would also just recommend continuing a second language onto grade 12 because it just shows consistency and looks good overall. In grade 12, I took economics, pre-calculus 12, AP English language and AP English literature, AP statistics and calculus, and French 12. Just a side note, pre-calculus 12 is a required course you must take in order to apply for the program, but calculus isn't. Although calculus isn't a required course, I still strongly recommend it because regardless if you've taken calculus 12 or not, you will have to take a math 100 course first year, which is basically calculus AB specifically. So I do recommend taking a calc AB class if you feel very strong in the math route, or just a calculus just to be familiar with the content. For extracurriculars in school, I'm the co-leader of my Harvest Project Club. The Harvest Project is a nonprofit organization based in the North Shore. So within that club, I was basically organizing all of our events, such as food drives and fundraisers and donations. I was also briefly the marketing executive to our school's tutoring club. Outside of school, I was a marketing assistant to a family restaurant based in North Vancouver called Bukton. There, I was basically just helping making Instagram posts and managing our Google business profile. My duties in that was just like replying to reviews and also collaborating with influencers who reached out to us and wanted to make a video or a post about our restaurant. I was also an assistant teacher at my Taekwondo dojo. I started volunteering about a summer ago, and my duties were essentially just helping out with the kids, helping them perfect their techniques, and also often running classes by myself once I became a black belt. I'm also the finance lead to the Kairos Time magazine, which is a student-led organization also based in the North Shore, where essentially we fundraise our own money to print magazines that showcase student artwork, but also written work. And that tackles varying topics such as global warming or just global issues or just someone's own personal story that they want to express through their work. And I've also been a barista at Cha Time, which is a global bubble tea brand for about 3 years now, I believe. Oh, and just to mention, for my average that they assessed me on, it was my first term grades, and that also included two of my grade 11 courses, and I had I believe, a 97 average when I was assessed for my application. Now, a little more into my personal profile. So essentially what I wrote about myself in my personal profile, some extracurriculars were the Harvest Project Club, my Taekwondo, my Java Cha Time, and the Kairos Time magazine. And basically, I know it's really vague when I say, oh yeah, these are the extracurriculars I wrote about. But basically, how I talked about them was in the context of diversity, resilience, and charity. So, in the example here, I'm talking about an issue that I faced at work and how I tackled it and what I learned from it. So, when you write your personal profile, I really recommend writing it in a narrative almost just to kind of make things smooth. And also, it shows that you learned from your experience and have had growth. So, then in this, I think I talked about racism in the workplace and how I overcame it with a coworker of mine and what I learned from this experience and how I know how to tackle this same experience or just a similar experience in the future. And how I tackled with my personal profile overall is I just did a lot of self-reflection. I asked myself questions like, what did I learn from these experiences? What impact did I make personally in the people that I'm involved with in my extracurriculars or just like outside of my own community? And I also thought about how these activities that I put my work into and put my hours into really helped me and made me the person I am today. So upon self-reflection, I was able to write my personal profile and kind of have an idea, baseline idea from there.
Okay, and now a little bit about my application. So the classes that I took in grade 11 or 12 to kind of skim through it, I took AP seminar, AP chemistry. My language for grade 11, which is required, was Japanese 11, and I continued that into grade 12. So I took Japanese 12. In grade 12, I continued the AP chemistry stream. I took AP chemistry 12 as well as AP English. And then I also took AP stats and calculus. Like Margaret mentioned before, I also really recommend taking a calculus course because even if you don't take it in high school, you need to take it first year in uni, and it just sort of prepares you, even if you don't take AP calculus or IB calculus. I don't know if that's a choice in IB, but if you don't take AP calculus, regular calc is still really helpful in first year for Math 100. And then for my extracurriculars, I am an executive in our school student council. So we organize a bunch of events for school spirit. And I was the marketing lead in grade 11 and the finance lead in grade 12. And then I was also the co-leader for Harvest Project, which I won't go over because Margaret already did. Outside of school, I play badminton. I was a provincial level player, and I also play at it for fun and recreational. And I was also on my school team. For work, I worked at Omomo as a sales associate and also a cafe staff when I was back during the summer. I also participated in a program that was coordinated by Illuminate Universe, where I hosted a business conference of my own. And those are some of the notable extracurriculars that I've done. Oh, to go back really quickly, I believe that my admissions average was around a 96 from what I've seen so far. Okay, and then now for my personal profile. A few of the topics I wrote about were student council, like I said before, my conference leading experience and traveling. And then a few of the ideas that I touched upon were my culture, my personal growth throughout high school, and my connection to my community. So how I answered a question is when I first get the question, I brainstormed about how to answer the question and experiences that could connect to the question. And then I asked myself a few questions. So why was this experience special to me and why was it important to myself? What characteristic did I build or what habits did I build that would help me in the future? And how did this experience impact not only me, but also the people surrounding me? So my community, my peers, or my family. And in my exemplar on the side, I talked about the Harvest Project and I connected it to how I could help other people that are not only in my school community, but also the people in the North Shore, the people that reach beyond the North Shore. and also what experience and what characteristics that I built by leading the Harvest Project. And then in your personal profile, you really want to touch upon like whatever characteristics that you believe are important for university or Sauder. They do give you a few outlines on their UBC Sauder website, like leadership, resilience, and you should definitely touch upon these in your personal profile answers.
Now, Ailee and I will go into how we prepared for the Sauder video interview since we both did it together and we both went through a similar experience. So what we first went to do in our preparation is research because we really didn't know what type of questions they would be asking us. So if you just do a quick Google search, past Sauder video interview questions, I believe a lot of sources come up. So I think particularly one source had a whole list of questions. So we just copy and pasted that into a Google Docs or something and started brainstorming. And we started brainstorming about what we could talk about, how should we respond, and we also self-evaluated ourselves, like, oh, are we good public speakers? What do I need to work on? And what can I do better?
And then on above all of this, after you've done all this, we highly recommend to practice, practice, practice. Get comfortable in front of your camera, get comfortable speaking. Even if you get nervous in public, me and Margaret, we did it with a group of friends, which definitely helped. And we kind of each asked each other questions and we answered it together in a group and evaluated how good our answers were practically. And this was really helpful along the process as you get to know kind of how to think faster, how to think on your feet, and how to answer the question quickly because you're on a time limit. And then finally, the execution, go to a quiet space and start recording. Make sure that your camera and mic are picking up properly because there are no redos. As much as I hate to say it, unless there's something wrong with your technology, then I think they can make an exception. But if you kind of cut yourself off in the middle of a question, just keep going until you really can't answer the question anymore. And then just make sure that what you're answering is kind of what's important to you and just think it through as much as possible in the time limit and go for it.
Now, just from our own reflection and thinking about our past uni application experience, here are some tips and suggestions. First one, I really cannot stress this enough. Prepare and brainstorm in advance. I personally started during the summer, so I didn't start my application until August, I believe, but during July, I just started thinking about not only which schools I wanted to apply to, but also what do I want to write about. So usually when you go about that, I'm a very organized type of person. So if I have like a very chaotic way of showing my ideas and stuff like that, I just can't focus and I end up just breaking down, honestly. So what really helped me was making a Google Sheets or a Google Doc of my extracurriculars, just listing them all out and the different experiences I had within each extracurricular. I would also say make your writing unique. I just saying it plainly, I really don't want to stress you guys out, but just saying it plainly, there are thousands of applicants, not only from Canada, but also international that are applying to UBC Sauder because just plainly saying it, UBC is a very renowned Canadian school. So just to be very transparent with you guys, there's a lot of people who are gonna have a similar applicant as you guys. So many people probably did Model UN, took AP classes, IB classes, whatnot. So you want to make sure that your writing is unique and just so true to you that it helps you make you stand out amongst the other applicants. Building upon this, I really recommend a narrative approach when answering these questions and just writing out your short paragraph answered questions. If you do a type of style where it's like, this is what I did, this is what happened from what I did, and this is what I learned, your writing can sound very soulless and just very cold. I really recommend just hang it in with a story. And it also helps with the admission officers when they're reading your application. It gives them a better idea of not only you, but also helps them visualize the situation and the authentic emotions that you are feeling in that moment and what other people are feeling in that moment. And also it gives a deeper like understanding of what you truly learned from after that experience. And also, I would really recommend to just ask questions and help when you really need it. I remember I would just be pestering all of my English teachers, just all of my counselors to read over my personal profile and make sure that it's as perfect as it can be. Not only did I reach out to like school figures, but I also reached out to parents and friends. I made my sister probably read it a million times over because honestly, even though it's really embarrassing at first, because yes, the first draft will not be perfect, I really recommend showing it to your family because they know you best, or even your friends, they know you best, and they'll just know that this is you, and they'll also be able to give better and deeper tips and advice when they read it over.
And then tip number 5, prior to starting your personal profile, or even while doing your personal profile, make sure you organize and reflect upon your experiences. And through this process, make sure you know your strengths. So make sure you know what makes you special. If you're a good problem solver, make sure they know you're a good problem solver. If you're good at taking the lead, if you're a good leader, make sure that they know that you're a good leader, because ultimately they want to know what your strengths are and what you bring to the table. Um, Going into our next tip, make sure you add as much detail as possible while staying on topic. I cannot stress enough, it's really important to kind of draw a picture of what you're good at and letting them know your experience, but also make sure that you're answering the question. So the question might be something along the lines of what do you value? And make sure you ultimately touch upon that final question of what you value in your response. Number 7, look into the program requirements and what Sauder values. So UBC Sauder, as a business school, they have a lot of like what they value as a school, like global culture and stuff like that. So make sure you look into that prior to starting your application. And of course, try to touch upon the values that Sauder wants in an applicant in your response, either indirectly or directly, either work. So if Sauder values resilience, make sure that you let them know that you're a resilient person, either through your experience or I would suggest through your experience because simply saying that you're a resilient person, it's not proving to them that you're a resilient person. So make sure that through your experience, you let them know that you carry the qualities of what it means to be a Sauder student. And then finally, 8, to plainly say it, maintain a competitive average. So me and Margaret both have averages up above a 95, but obviously that's not the sole determinant factor in your application. But we obviously recommend to keep a competitive average, especially if you want to get in during the early rounds. And of course, not to like let it drop too much between your terms. Is there anything I'm missing? I
No,
think
I
that's it.
think you got it. And I think we'll just jump into our Q&A session now.
Okay, now thank you so much for that amazing presentation. So now moving on to the Q&A session, I see that there's already a question in the Q&A box. So maybe start with that question and hopefully more questions will start piling in. Wait, can you guys
I
see
can't
that?
Is yeah,
Okay.
I can see
I
it.
can't access it. Can Ailee read out the
Okay, I
question,
will
please?
read it.
Okay.
So, one of the questions is a Science 12 course required for UBC Sauder? I could,
Um, yeah, you can talk about it.
okay, yeah. So, a Science 12 course is not required. I'm pretty sure Margaret didn't have a Sauder, didn't have a Science 12. Yeah, so it's not required to have a Science 12 credit. It's required to have a Science 11, I believe, or it's highly recommended to get into UBC, but 12 is not required. I do recommend taking it if you enjoy sciences, though, because personally for me, I really enjoyed chemistry and it was kind of a GPA booster for me. So I continued it into grade 12. So if you enjoy sciences, I think there's no harm in taking a science 12, but it's not required. So yeah. And then I'll read the second one. How did you find extracurricular opportunities?
All right. I could talk about that. For me personally, I just kind of reached out to the places myself. So specifically how Ailee and I started up our club. We basically did research on different charities that we wanted to work with and did a research on their values and how they help out the community. And we just found that not only is the Harvest Project aligning with our values, but they're also quite close to where we live. So we just thought about it logically as well. Oh, if we want to do donations or a fundraiser or something like that, just for also convenience, it would be ideal to have it somewhere close where we live and are based in. So that's how we decided to reach out to the Harvest Project. And we honestly just called them up. Yeah, we just went back and forth with emails and just started working with them. I would say just look for opportunities in your community and don't be shy because they're honestly looking for people like us who are willing to help and really care about the values that they value. So honestly, just don't be shy. They're all very nice people, I'm sure. And yeah, that way you can start up like your own charity organization thing, club at your own school or something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
And
for
also
type,
to add, okay,
oh, sorry. You can
no,
go,
go
you can
ahead.
go. I was gonna say, how I did the whole teaching assistant thing at my dojo, it was because I was already a student and I was already like working towards my black belt. So then they let me, I was also really close with my headmasters there. So I just kind of talked with them and was like, hey, I'm really interested in doing this. I like not only doing the classes, but working with the little kids. Like, would you be willing to make me a teacher assistant? This is when I wasn't a super high belt level either. I think I was a blue belt. I don't know if you're unfamiliar with Taekwondo, that's basically like an intermediate level. So then I started teaching being a teacher assistant then, and then I did it up until I finally got my black belt and even afterwards. I would just say overall tips, reach out to people, don't be shy, and honestly just start your own organization because there's no harm in doing so. There's no backfire or anything like that. And for Ailee, to add that on, you're gonna say something?
Yeah, so to add on to that, I just really want to emphasize like we get these extracurricular opportunities by connecting with different people in our community. So for my conference opportunity, it was actually given to me by one of my grade 12 level teachers. He happened to have known someone who was hosting the program, and I was interested because I was talking to him, and that's how I got the opportunity. For anything that's in school, actively take part in being a part of your school community. If you have a student council and you're interested in that, take part in that. If you have a club that you're interested in, actively participate in it, and the opportunities will be given to you if you're an active participant. Um, so yeah, I just feel like staying active in your community is really like the major part, and also taking the opportunity and like in your own hands and like actively searching these opportunities. It wasn't really like anything specific. It was just sort of something me and Margaret were already interested in. So we kind of seeked out opportunities in the areas that we were interested in.
I see
And
someone typed in the chat. Maybe I'll just do that question first, and then there's
okay,
two new ones in the Q&A, so we can go to one after that.
there's four.
Um,
Okay, yeah.
oh, but isn't that or whatever? What academic courses can be counted GPA for admission to Sauder School? I saw you both took second language. Is second language 12 required? Do you want to talk about that, Ailey?
Yeah, so academic courses, when I was looking, is practically anything that's not an elective. So your language counts, which is why we took a language 12, but language 12 is not required. Language 11 is required. And then academic courses in grade 11 and 12 are counted. So if you took like sciences, math, English, social studies type of thing, anything that's counted towards your GPA, I believe is counted. Yeah, so just practically they don't really take any electives. So if you're taking an ADST, that's like what wouldn't be counted? Like foods,
Mm.
textiles, woodwork generally wouldn't be counted, but anything that's considered like a core course would be counted. Yeah, and also you can search up on UBC, like they give you an outline, I believe, on what's considered like an academic course for UBC Sauder. Just because off the top of my head, like I don't know if that kind of connects to any of you, but yeah, so just generally like your core courses that you'd normally think of. So like science, math, English, socials are like the general ones, and then language as well. I think that's
Yeah,
it.
just to
Yeah.
add on to that, all the information is on the UBC website. It's just when you type in like UBC Sauder requirements for
Requirements,
going
yeah.
into first year, everything shows up. And I'm pretty sure they also show it for different school types like IB, AP, also for the UK, I believe. So all the information should be on there. And if you're still confused, you can always call the I believe the undergraduate officers, they'll be able to answer all those type of questions for prospective students. Um, I still can't access the Q&A, so could
Okay, I will
Ailee
answer.
kindly, thank you.
I saw that someone like asked another question, so we'll touch on that after we've gone through the questions in the Q&A. So, the next question is, when you said maintain your average, does it mean the average of all your academic classes throughout all of high school or just 11 and 12 average?
Uh, for UBC or just for Canadian schools in general, I would say for your grade 11 and grade 12 courses, since they won't be looking at any grades below grade 11, by maintaining it. So, for example, just in our scenario, we're in grade 12. So our version of maintaining a competitive average is just making sure that the current grade 12 courses that we're taking are still very high grade courses, like high grades. And it doesn't affect our overall GPA as much. And what I mean by our overall GPA is our overall grade 12 level courses that we took throughout our whole high school career. So then for UBC, I believe we don't do a GPA, we just do an average. So then for grade 11, you have a grade 11 average, grade 12, you have a grade 12 average, and then sometimes they look at both of them at the same time when they're assessing you. So then it's grade 11 and grade 12 average. So then basically maintaining it, I would say if you are a student who particularly gets like high 90s, like above a 95, try to keep up that same pattern because if you just flop one of your classes that you get like a 70, that'll probably make a dent in your GPA. And that would not be very ideal and also a little disheartening since you worked so hard up until that point. So I would just say keep working hard and um just to let us slide a bit for grade 12 after you get into UBC Sauder, they're actually quite lenient with your grades. Obviously, I'm not saying, oh yeah, it's okay if you get like 60s in all your classes, sorry. 60s in
After
all
you
your
get in, yeah.
classes after you get in, after maintaining like a 90 average. Don't do that, please. But if you drop like what 5%, 2% in some of your classes, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. And then
I hope that answered your question.
getting at this question, if you're applying for early admission, they you apply in December. So they're mostly looking at your grade 12 term one marks
Term one
and
grade.
your grade 11 marks. If you apply during the regular admission season, they're looking at your term two marks in grade 12, as well as if you had like a really high mark in grade 11, they'll consider it in your top six courses.
And
But
for those
for the
who,
most part,
oh,
they only look at 11 and 12. Oh, yeah.
no, don't worry. And for those who don't know what we mean by like early round and regular round, early round is basically people who get admitted during January till February. And then regular would be February till April, I believe. And then afterwards, those are deferred admissions. So essentially, if you apply to the early round, so before December, but you don't get in, don't fret. Like that doesn't mean you're totally rejected from UBC. It just means you'll be bumped to regular rounds, and that also doesn't really affect your chances of getting in. That just means you'll be now compared to the pool of applicants in the regular round. A next question,
Um,
please.
yeah. Is is grade 11 too late to start extracurriculars, clubs, or things to boost your personal profile?
Uh,
Amy?
yeah, sure. Let's both go for it.
Okay, I'll start then. So I'd never say that anything is too late. UBC or like colleges in general, they like to see that you've continued an activity like throughout a long time span. So I'd say first of all, look at what you have done and see if you can continue anything. So if you do like a sport, it doesn't have to be related to business. It can be anything that you're passionate about. So if you do a sport, considering um, that consider that you should continue that sport into grade 11. But if you're also interested in anything new, I don't see any harm in like starting an extracurricular. Me and Margaret, we started our club last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, in grade 11. So I'd never say that it's too late. But just also think about what you've already been doing because I'm sure that you guys are all really unique people and that you guys have like experiences or like interests yourself. So just think about like what interests you. And yeah, so it's never too late to start, in my opinion.
Yeah, in my opinion, I
Mhm.
don't think it's ever too late to start. I know, of course, some people have done maybe like piano for 7 or 8 years. Um, I definitely wasn't one of those people. I really didn't go into any extracurriculars until grade 10. So that does also include my taekwondo. I didn't really start anything till grade 10. That's when I got my first job and started getting into taekwondo. And then grade 11 is when I started getting a little more active in my community and getting a little more serious since I was feeling the pressures of grade 11 and upcoming university applications. So that kind of also just pushed me further, like, oh yeah, I need to start looking now. So then, honestly, it's never too late to start. And universities, they do like to see longevity, but I wouldn't say it's a requirement. I would say they're more interested in the fact that you're actually passionate about the extracurriculars that you're in and not just doing it to slap it on your application and saying like, oh yes, I did this. I hope that
Okay.
answers your question.
And then the next question is work experience necessary? I saw that you both have work experience.
Do
You
you want me
want
to
to?
go?
Okay, I can go.
Okay.
So work experience isn't necessary. It's just like a part of our regular extracurriculars, and we just kind of both started working because we thought it was time to start working. If you have a job, I'd say it definitely like it helps because it's like your personal experience, like, oh yeah, it kind of builds resilience in the workforce, and they like to see that. But if you're also doing like anything that's not work, like volunteering, that's also great. If you volunteer at a library, it's not so much of the work part, it's more so that you are interacting with your community and that you are like doing work around your community. So even if you're like a summer camp leader, that helps. Just anything that you might be like doing around your community. It doesn't necessarily need to be paid work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to build onto that, I think, yeah, it's not required, but I would strongly recommend it because universities do like to see that a student has a variety of things that they've been doing, and they don't really like to see a student who just involves in their studies. Of course, studying is good, get good grades, do learn the courses that you're interested in, but they also like to see that you're able to handle a lot more than just school. So yeah, just including ourselves in extracurriculars and working is a big part of that because unlike an extracurricular, you're in like a small, safe community most of the time. And work, most often you're put in a very difficult situation. So they do like to see that resilience and the fact that you're able to have interpersonal connections and just work well with others that are not familiar in your own small bubbles of community.
And the next question, do you know what the average is for Sauder or like the bar average? So I'm assuming that he's saying admission average into Sauder.
Yeah. So on the website, it says above like an 86,
70. It says
89.
70.
Yeah, above a 70. Um,
But um
say unless you're like the next Mother Teresa and have done a bunch of extracurriculars that are just like absolutely outstanding and you apply with a 70, you'll probably have a good chance of getting in. If you're just doing like clubs, work, or like maybe Model UN or maybe like yes, like Ailee, a business conference, I would say maintaining a competitive average is really important because in the past few years, the past students who've also applied to Sauder have usually maintained a very high average, usually like above a 90. Um, Like I mentioned before, I when I was admitted to Sauder, I had a 97 average and I got in during the early rounds. And then Ailee, like she said, she had a 96 and then she got in just like a week after me.
During regular.
So
Yeah.
yeah, she got in the first round of regular. So
Yeah.
honestly,
First
okay,
round.
for the early and the regular, we're still very confused on that
Yeah,
because it's
it's kind
literally
of
just
confusing.
like, yeah,
So, early admission, oh, it's kind of confusing. So they have like two
yeah.
big rounds in each. And then, so the first big round is in February. That's early big round. And then there's big round of like regular admissions, which is like beginning of April. And then in between, they have a cutoff where they don't give out any admissions to at least domestic students because me and Margaret are both domestic. And then they kind of like in between like those two rounds, they have like rolling admissions.
Yeah.
It's kind of confusing. I don't really know how to explain it, but I'd say definitely try to get in like during a big round because your chances are slightly higher. But obviously that's not something that you can control. So and then for bar average, I'd say try to maintain an A average.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's like a good like border like not borderline, but I think that's a good like rule
Hmm.
of thumb. Try to aim for like above a 90. If you can't, aim for high 80s. Yeah, so I don't think there's necessarily like a cutoff. We know people, we both have like 95 and above, but we also know people who had like around a 90 and they also got in as well. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think just try to
I would
get it as yeah, you can
Yeah,
go.
I would say if you want to try to get in the early rounds, definitely try to get an average above a 95, like aim for like a 96 or a 97. If you're fine with going into the regular rounds, I would just say like 90 to 95 average should be just fine. Or like yeah, like Ailey said, high 80s.
Yeah, A average, high A average. Um, okay. I don't know if my questions are in. Okay. What other business schools did you apply to? Is the application process similar to Sauder?
Oh yeah. I think, do you want to take this question, Ailey? I think you applied to a few more than I did. Or did we do the same?
I think we did it on the same. So I
Okay.
applied to Sauder. I applied to SFU's BD as my backup, and then I also applied to McGill and U of T, and I got into all three. The application process is similar for most business schools. They, for the most part, require like a extra application, a written application, except for McGill. So McGill is like the only school that's like sole averages that I've seen. So yeah, that one is you don't need any separate application. But for most of the business schools like BD, Sauder, Rotman Commerce, which is the business school at U of T, they are required some sort of like extra written component or interview component. Um, and yeah, it's quite similar. Like the questions are kind of looking for about the same thing, like leadership, resilience, business characteristics. And then it just sort of depends on the school how they ask you and what form they like take in that information. And then
Yeah.
Margaret applied to like a few other ones, I believe.
Yeah, I applied to SFU Beauty as my backup. I applied to Western Ivy, and I also applied to Smith School of Business at Queen's. Um, I withdrew my Smith application the moment I got into UBC, so I don't know if I got it or not.
I
But
didn't talk about it.
I did get into Western Ivy and BD School of Business. Western Ivy does also have a video interview portion for their application, and that's actually 5 questions instead of the two like Sauder. And BD doesn't have any video interview questions. I would say the style of video interview questions were similar, but I feel like BD, sorry, I Western Ivies were a bit more relaxed, as in I think one of the questions I got was if you were a dog, what type of dog would you be and reasons why you would be that type of dog. While I believe the questions I got for Sauder were one of them was responsibility is a key value at Sauder. Why is it important within groups and between groups? So, as you can see, there are varying levels to these types of questions, and you just have to learn how to be quick on your feet and brainstorm your response quickly, and just to see, like, oh, yeah, how should I tackle this question in a manner where I'm showing my personality and I'm answering in an eloquent, nuanced way, and how can I touch on the values that they value?
So the next question is, since you both are incoming freshmen, do you have advice on networking or making new friends in a new environment?
Okay. Do you want me to take that one?
You can start.
Okay. I would say if you're okay, in a professional setting, I would say if you're trying to network, coffee chats are really important. So what I mean by coffee chats is basically going up to someone being, hey, for example, hey, I'm Margaret. I'm gonna put myself in a scenario where I'm still in grade 12 and I haven't got it admitted to UBC Sauder. Like, hey, I'm Margaret. I am a student at Sentinel Secondary and I am applying to universities at the moment. And I know that you're a freshman at UBC Sauder, and I was just wondering if you have a few minutes to chat and talk about how you got in and about the whole application process. Or when you're older and into the years and you're doing more networking stuff for internships, you want to do it like, hey, I'm Margaret. I'm a student at UBC Sauder and I'm looking for an internship at like your company. And these are the reasons why you should basically hire me. When you're basically networking in a professional setting, I know this sounds really bad, but you're basically selling yourself. You're selling your assets because they want to know what do you bring to the table and why should they specifically pick you. I know it's really hard if you're someone that's very uncomfortable with public speaking or just like to keep to yourself, but just to plainly say it, in business, a lot of the things that are just involved in the business world and how you're going to get your opportunities are going to be through networking. And not all of it is going to be face to face, like, hi. It could be through cold emails or something like that. You can just email the company and just be like, hey, this is me, blah, 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 blah. And you can attach your resumes, your experiences, or just anything that you think that will help sell yourself to the company. Um, if you're just looking for like personal networking stuff, like I don't know, making friends at Sauder maybe, or just like in school to help. I don't know, if you want to do a club, but you don't want to do it by yourself and you want to try to find someone to do it with you or something like that, I would just say, just start talking to people. And I would reach out to people that you know or have an idea of having similar interests as you. So just be like, hey, I want to do this thing and I think you would be really interested in it. And I think you would also be really like a valuable asset to this. So I was wondering if you want to work with this on me. I think I did that with Ailee when I knew I wanted to start up a club and I knew she was interested into getting an extracurricular. So I think I literally just talked about it with her and I was like, yeah, like I want to start up a club. Like, do you want to do this with me? So honestly, I would just say don't be shy. We're all in the same boat and people will be open to hear you out and just listen to you.
Yeah. And then to add on to that, just sort of like in a relaxed setting, just be open to meeting new people, like meeting people with different perspectives, and then just like making new friends. Like even if you're not close with the person, I think still being in touch with someone new is like very beneficial for you. And then just be open about it. Just spark up a conversation randomly. I don't know. But yeah, it's really no different than making friends in high school, even if it's in like a more professional setting. Like the ultimate like goal is the same, and you're trying to make a new connection. So yeah, I can't really give you any like there's no like special tip to getting know
Mhm.
like new people. Just be open to meeting more people, and then you'll eventually meet more people that are like either similar or different to you, but they'll be beneficial to your life, I believe. Okay. And then the next question is it okay to not have an extracurricular for years?
Oh, sorry, could you please repeat that?
My headphone just died. So can we hear me?
Yes.
The next question is it okay to not have an extracurricular that you have been doing for years? I'm in a grade 11 going to grade 12, and I only came to Canada before grade 10, so they don't have any activities that they've been doing for a long time, practically.
Okay. Do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, so obviously it's okay to not have an extracurricular that you haven't been doing that long. Like me and Margaret said before, like our club just started off last year, so it's no like it's no biggie if you don't have something that you've been doing for a long time. Like, oh yeah, my parents didn't put me in piano school when I was like 4. That's fine. Just make sure that what you're doing now is what you're really passionate about and that you can kind of argue to why you're doing it now. And I think that's the most important part of that. Is there anything?
Yeah, just to add on to that, school, you think they wouldn't notice, but schools do know when you're just doing extracurriculars and different stuff just to put it on paper. I think it mainly comes from your writing. If you're just like, oh yeah, I did this, this is what I did, and just left it at that, they can tell that you just did it just to put on your resume or just to talk about it in university applications. So that's why I stress the importance of involving yourself in extracurriculars that you're really invested in and that you know that you will be obviously maintaining for like a long time. For the Harvest Project, Ailee and I both knew that we both really want to do it and be involved in our community. So I think that's what made our application when we talked about it that more special because you can tell that we're very genuine and passionate about the cause of the organization.
And then,
Are those all the cute? Oh, never mind.
oh,
Sorry.
there's 3 more.
Okay.
Okay. So the next one is, would you say there's a higher chance of admission for early runs or early admission? There isn't.
I guess I'll talk about this.
Okay. But okay, yeah,
I
you can
don't
talk
know.
about it. Yeah.
There's not a better chance. I would say if you're if you have a high GPA and you have a feeling that your personal profile is quite strong, I would say go for it because your chances of getting into early round are quite good if you do have a high GPA and your personal profile is strong. Um, I wouldn't say, sorry, did they say a better chance? Sorry. I don't know if they
Yeah,
said
higher
better.
chance. Is there a higher chance of getting in early?
Not really. For early, it's usually for the students who have a higher average throughout high school, and that's not just for Sauder, it's just for like all the faculties in general.
Yeah. So early admission is like they hire people who really stand out in your class. So if you feel like you have a really strong personal profile and you have really strong grades, we would recommend it because there's no harm to applying early. Because worst case scenario, you just get deferred to regular and then your application gets like reassessed. But yeah, we recommend it if you're like if you think that you're a strong student or like if you feel like your personal profile is really good. But then if you feel like you need a bit more time to write your personal profile, or if you feel like your term 1 grades weren't as good as you wanted them to be and you wanted to wait for term 2, like that's fine as well. Like there's no like higher chance in getting in. So yeah. Okay. And then the next question is, are there any study tips and how did you manage schoolwork with all your extracurriculars?
Um,
We didn't manage really well, but it's okay.
okay, I think I'm
No, actually, Margaret managed pretty well.
okay. Yeah, I managed pretty well. I think for study tips, everyone is different. So I'll just tell you how I study. I'm a very type A person, and what that basically means, I have to be very organized, or else I'll actually probably go insane and just not recollect myself ever. So how I basically studied was I always made myself a daily agenda of things to do. So I would write it right away once the teacher was like, oh yeah, like this is the homework today. We're gonna have a test on this day. I would always make sure to write it in my daily agenda. So I will not forget about it later on. And I also have a Google Calendar specifically for school. So I can also schedule tests, quizzes, and as like assignment due dates on there. So I just have a better idea of like the timeline and how long I ideally need to prepare for certain assessments. Mm, for tests, personally, I know some people literally just study the day before, the night before, whatever, and they get perfect 100. but I'm definitely not one of those people. I really like to take my time to study for tests usually because, of course, those are bigger assessments. And I'm someone who doesn't retain information immediately. If, like, for example, if I study the night before, I won't remember anything the next day. So I usually like to give myself time to study, like, upon like a 7 day period. The first 3 to 4 days is just specifically focusing on subunits, if that makes sense. So for math, an example, we'll have like a chapter test, right? And within those chapters, there's sub chapters, like subunits. So I'll usually spend a day, like an hour a day for those subunits. So I'll be studying like, for example, oh, I can't think of anything. Oh my God. Well, we learned integrals in calculus 12. That was my last chapter. So maybe first unit was like indefinite, definite integrals. And then the next day I'll be learning the next subunit, which was like maybe volume or something like that. And then the remaining 3 days to 4 days, I just spend reviewing on questions, style of questions, or concepts I particularly had a hard time understanding. So then that way I have a better time I have a better chance of digesting the information, and I'm also not on a crunch for time because when I'm on a crunch for time, I also get stressed, and that doesn't really help me retain information. Study tips. I would say, of course, like obviously everyone's different, and just to some people, studying comes naturally. It's like a sixth sense. For me, I sometimes have a hard time just sitting down and focusing. So for tests where it's just like all memorization, for example, like like a social studies course, I would usually, this sounds really crazy, I know. I would play classical music in the back and I will literally walk in circles while I'm going through my cue card. I know it sounds really odd, and it kind of is if you're a third person just looking into my room and seeing what I'm doing. It literally looks like I look crazy, but I don't know. Some studies show that if you're doing memorization stuff, it really helps to have some physical movement and also just like walking or just like walking in circles like me, maybe. And personally for me, I just can't sit in a chair and trying to memorize all this information. I just get super claustrophobic sometimes and I just need some movement in my body. If you're studying for a course like mathematics or a science, I would recommend just really focusing on the topics that on like the content that you're really struggling on because I see no point in studying stuff that you already are good at, if that makes sense. I think Ailey can probably go more into that for sciences and like math.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll go over like my study tips like a little bit. So I'm like the opposite of Margaret. I procrastinate a lot. But ultimately I get the job done. So I think that's like okay. Don't procrastinate, guys. But I use the Cornell method, which I think is really helpful for note taking. You can search up. It's like University of Cornell method. Practically, like you have like one side of your topics, and then the other side is your description, and that's like the way that I've been note taking for about like 2 years now, and I found it really helpful. So, if you're like a note taker, I recommend like maybe looking into it. Obviously, like there's people that don't like taking notes. Like if you're a cue card person, like that's fine as well. I think finding like a way to study that works for you is the most important part. And then just because Margaret didn't, I think you missed this part, but how did you manage your schoolwork with all your extracurriculars?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's not really like a specific way on how we do it, but just kind of organizing your time. Like if you're a good organizer like Margaret, you kind of like block out all your time for like different things you want to do. And then I think that really helps as well. Like that's what I do for if I have like a certain activity I want to do like Thursday, I at like 6 to 5, I'm doing something for this club. Like that doesn't always work, but I think balancing all of it and finding like a perfect like balance between school and outside of school is different for everyone. So yeah, I don't really know like what tips I would give for that though.
Yeah. I think one thing though, discipline, like self-discipline plays a really big role. If you say you're gonna do it, you should do it. And if you have a hard time on doing that, if you're very lenient on yourself, because honestly, I get it. Some days you just can't get to work and get the job done. I totally get it. We all have those days. I think what really helps is like telling a close friend of mine, like, oh yeah, I want to get this and this done. Could you please keep me on top of it? Just like text me a reminder, like, oh, did you do this yet? I think that way, just having someone checking in on you and making sure that you did what you planned or said you were gonna do really helps. I also think with the whole like managing school and extracurriculars, it is very stressful. Like I won't sugarcoat it. It is stressful. So I will say definitely take a like for example, if you're stressed, take a few minutes of your day to just kind of have a breather and have some time to yourself. I think particularly during university application season, I was just stressed every day. I actually grew some white hairs, so that's how stressed I was. I think what helped was just taking a quick walk around my neighborhood and just letting myself cool down before getting right back into it. So definitely listen to your body because I know a few people who got really sick because they were like stressed out of their minds. So please, above all, yes, I know school extracurriculars are important, but your body and your health are more important. So just definitely make sure to take care of yourself.
Okay, and I know we're running a little over time, but there's two more questions that I feel like we should touch on, and then
Okay.
yeah. So the next question is, if I take both chemistry 11 and physics 11, and if for one of them I don't get a good mark, will it affect my application to Sauder? Or can I just use a good one in my application?
Mm, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, sure. So they take your top six to calculate your average. I don't really know how to answer this, but they take your top six to answer your average. So it won't really affect your average that much, but they do get all of your grades. So they'll see the grade, but if you keep all your other courses like a decently good average, or if you're, I believe that you're in grade 11. So if your grade 12 term one marks are also like a competitive average, I don't think it will affect your mark too much. They will see it though. So I don't know if that like I don't know if that affects your application. I don't think it would.
They do drop your lowest mark
Yeah. Oh,
when
yeah,
they're
yeah.
assessing you. Yeah. So yeah, they look at your top six, grade 11, grade 12 courses combined. I believed it was grade 12, but there was a way that we could check on what classes that they assessed us on, and a few of them were grade 11. So I guess they look at grade 11 and grade 12 combined top six courses, and they do drop your lowest mark. So honestly, if you feel like you didn't do the best in one of the courses, I wouldn't really stress too much
There's the
about
other
it.
ones, yeah. And then the next question is, there was no socials 12 in Margaret's application. Is it not required for
Oh,
admission?
so funny thing, the social studies class I took, UBC doesn't even look at. They don't. It's like um it counts towards my graduation, so thank God I can graduate. But UBC technically doesn't look at the socials 12 course that I took. I would recommend taking a look at what courses that they do assess you on. I believe there's a way to search that up and look more into that, or if anything, you can just call the admissions people. Um, Personally, if you think a socials 12 course could be a GPA booster for you, make sure that it's one that it's accounted for. Personally, I just knew that if I took a socials 12 course, that would like they would look at, it wouldn't matter too much because I had a lot of other like high grade courses. So I just didn't think a socials 12 was needed as a GPA booster. So I just took one that I thought that was fun, even though UBC didn't look at it.
Yeah. And then going back to our presentation before, the classes that we mentioned were mostly all the courses that counted towards our GPA or our calculated average. So we took out all of our electives. So I took out Foods 12 and like stuff like that. And then I believe Margaret also took out all of her ADSTs. So that socials doesn't count, but you need a social to graduate in BC.
Yeah.
You need the socials 12. And if it's considered a related course, I think Sauder would look into it, but it's not required for admission, I believe. Hopefully.
I would also say for ADST courses, if your school offers it, I do recommend to take them like business related ones. ADST courses that were business related at my school that I took were marketing 11, accounting 11 and accounting 12. Although they didn't account towards my overall academic average, I still took them because they do look at it. Like they look at the whole transcript because it just gets sent to the academic officers. So then they do see like what courses you just took overall, even if they're non-academic, and just showing that you've had an interest in the business route for like not a while, but since before grade 12 does help, I believe. I would say so. I would just the reason why I'm saying that is because it wouldn't make sense if you took like all science courses or something like that, or all like arts root courses like fine arts or something like that, and then you're applying to Sauder. Yes, they look for diversity, but they also look for consistency.
And that's the last of all I can see.
Okay, I think, yeah, that's the end of all the questions. Thank you, Margaret and Ailee, so much for coming in today and telling everyone your personal experiences, as well as giving very nice tips for anyone who is currently thinking about applying to any business schools, especially Sauder. So I'm not sure if you guys are okay with this, but just in case anyone has any extra questions, are you guys okay with just sharing your email to the chat?
Yeah, for sure.
That if anyone wants to contact any of you guys further about any questions for Sauder, then they could totally do that. And then yeah, and then for more information about this webinar, for those who if you have any friends who weren't able to come today or anyone you know who wasn't able to make it, this webinar has been recorded and it will be posted later on onto the website, as well as the WeChat group chat and our Instagram as well. So you could totally share that around to any of your friends who would also be interested in this. But yeah, that would be it for today's webinar. Thank you once again to Margaret and Ailee, and I hope all of the participants and attendees learned a lot today. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Oh yeah, sorry
Bye.
for going a bit late, later than 2 p.m. Bye.
Anyways, I hope it helped.
Okay. I hope that went well.
Yeah, it went well. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.